Welcome back, Troopers on Break. I am here with Matt Masters, and we have quite an interesting theory in our minds right now. I brought it to Matt Master, and he brought up some really good points. Do you want to give him a little preview of what this video is going to be about?
Yeah, I was skeptical, I'll be honest, of the theory at first, but I think I'm full on conspiracy theorist at this point. And it's all about the next GL. And I think the next GL is pretty obviously going to be Thrawn. I don't think there's any real question about it, right? I mean, obviously it's going to be Thrawn, except for the fact that maybe it's not. Troopers kind of brought this up to me originally about, first of all of the requirements for Thrawn. Any requirements that we would want for Thrawn are basically already required for Ahsoka. You think about Enoch, Death Trooper Pridia, Night Trooper, even Balin to some extent. I think you could argue should have been a requirement for Thrawn, but I think that, and obviously he wasn't required for Ahsoka, but I think that we have more requirements that are just required for Ahsoka that don't really make sense for her and would make more sense for Thrawn. My biggest contention is the version of Thrawn that we have in the game right now is basically the same version of Thrawn that we've seen in Ahsoka so far, because the version we saw in Ahsoka season, I guess Ahsoka season 1, hasn't done that much yet. And we need to see what he actually does and how he's different before I think we can get a version of him. So I don't think a GL Thrawn's never happening. I just don't think it's happening this year, even late this year, because I think we need to see Ahsoka season 2 or possibly this Dave Filoni movie that's coming out to see what's actually happening with Thrawn before he can lead Imperial Remnant as a GL or something like that. So we were looking for another character, and we wanted it to be Darkseid, and I'll let Troopers take it from here.
Yeah, so our current theory, as of right now, throwing Thrawn to the wayside for 2026 is none other than Maul. And to be more specific, Crimson Dawn Maul. And here's my logic behind it. When I saw Ahsoka's event, it got leaked to me. I'm very upset about it. But when I saw it, you were playing through her life. You were going a little bit like in bits and pieces of her life, and it went from when she was a Padawan, when she was on Mandalore, all the way now where she was fighting Balin, and including the World Between Worlds as well. But I believe it is going to be Maul because you can do the exact same thing, and it's been said multiple times that they are parallels of each other. Maul is the dark side version of Ahsoka. Ahsoka is the light side version of Maul. And I really think you could do a lot with that with Maul. And I think Crimson Dawn Maul is a character that is very slept on. And if you haven't read comics, you don't know much about him. But I think there's so much Capital Games can do with this character. And they can bring so much stuff, as you'll see in this video.
Well, and even outside of the comics, I think there's enough within Maul's storyline that I don't think Maul, the version that we have in the game right now, is the pinnacle version of Maul. I think that there is a version of Maul that is further along than that. I mean, even if you just look at like the Rebels version of Maul, if you wanted to just go that far, some people would say maybe he's like washed up at that point or whatever, but I still think he's the older and wiser Maul is a different version of him, and we're missing that in the game currently, since the Maul, not Darth Maul, Maul in the game is really based on Clone Wars Season 7. So I think that going with that idea of going through the life of Ahsoka in that event, I think this mirroring that and going through the life of Maul would be really cool. So I think going through some of the requirements or going through his life and then looking at different stages and possibly pointing out some different requirements that could be required, both in-game currently and new characters, I think would be really cool. So that's what we're going to go through, and I'll let Troopers take the first one.
Yeah, and Mike, first thing is, before anyone says anything, we saw Crimson Dawn in Solo for like a minute. All I'm saying is we have Darkseid Rey, and she was in there for 3 seconds of the sequel of Episode 9. So I don't want to hear, oh, he was only there for a minute and 13 seconds. Darkseid Rey was there for 3 seconds, so...
Well, and we got a lot more of Maul in Rebels, and we saw more of him there. So I do think it's still a worthwhile character for, and I think he still has the notoriety and the fan base, honestly, to be a GL.
I completely agree. But going on to what the event would look like in some requirements, we would start with Phantom Menace. And I think two that Matt and I came up with that are some give-me's is Master Qui-Gon and Padawan Obi-Wan. A lot of people have slept on these two characters. You either went all in on them or you just said, I'm not going for them. I think this would be a great way to incentivize the community to farm Padawan Obi-Wan as well as Master Qui-Gon to get them up to those rogue levels, and it would be a bonus because once you do, you get that assault battle, you get those materials and stuff. So I think these two are really great. What do you think, Matt?
I would love to play through Duel of the Fates, and the assault battle just isn't quite enough for me. So I think, especially if we can get the music into the game and play through it with Duel of the Fates in the background, I think that has potential to be one of my favorite GL events, if not my favorite, if they do it really well. And this one, I'm not like 100% confident that they would require both, or maybe they just do Padawan Obi-Wan. But because it is a little nice kind of from CG to have these two required because of how good they are and how many. I mean, obviously everyone knows they do really well with Quadme, but I've been running a free-to-play where I've been farming them early and using them under Kellerant Beck, and it's been absolutely incredible. These two are just powerhouses in the game, so I don't know if they'll be that nice to us, but I'm hopeful. Hopefully optimistic that we can get some good requirements in there. They are high Kairos, so I mean, at least CG kind of gets their win that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Especially if you're a newer player and you're like, man, I love like Maul. It's hey, you're gonna have to get those Kairos up. They're just gonna be hitting double shard farmable this coming year also. So people are gonna be catching up on farms, especially with Naboo not being such a big hit. So
yeah,
I can definitely see that. But the next requirement is Mother Talzin, and I brought this one up to Matt because I think this is, in my opinion, stronger than Padawan Obi-Wan and Master Qui-Gon for the fact and relationship that Maul had with her. It was the fact that he knew to go to her. He didn't call her Mother Talzin. He called her Mother. And it was that mother-son relationship that they had together that I think they could have done so much more. Again, if you didn't read the comics, you won't understand the full logic. But spoiler alert, the comic's been out for 10 years. Mother Talzin ends up fending off Grievous, Dooku, and Sidious, all three at once, in order to save Maul so he could live. And that, I think, is something that you could easily touch on or go through. I really do see her as a requirement, though, for Maul. I think you have to touch on that Night Sister, Night Brother synergy and such.
And I think that we see a little bit of that in the Clone Wars as far as like Maul being broken and obviously his legs not being there anymore. And then Talzin helping him restore that. And I think playing off of that, it kind of it brings us into another requirement that I think would make a lot of sense, which is Savage. Savage and Sidious, I think, are both really good requirements that we currently have in the game that I think make a ton of sense. I think if Savage wasn't required, I'd be shocked, honestly, because he's his brother and they just had a bond, and while Savage is a pretty short-lived character, I think that this could be the nice give-me character, kind of like Asajj was with Ahsoka, or like Barriss was, like a nice freebie, probably low relics, because they don't really need to incentivize you to take Savage to higher relics, because I don't think anyone would really complain if they had to take their Savage to higher relics for a GL requirement.
No. I completely agree with this one. I see them possibly doing a throne room scene where they have to fight Sidious, and you have Savage, and then going into our next requirement, Maul. And if you're not seeing a common theme yet, we believe both Mauls will be required for the event if we're getting a GL Maul. Sort of like how Ahsoka was. All the Ahsokas were required at the highest relic that's out right now, Relic 9. If there's a Relic 10, I can almost guarantee that it will be both Mauls at Relic 10. I can bet anything. I'm saying both.
Yeah, I think both is pretty likely. And I'd love to see this fight specifically in the Journey Guide. This was one of my favorite fights in Clone Wars. Just seeing Sidious mop the floor with both of them at the same time and not even break a sweat and just smile the whole time. It was epic. Another fight that came from Clone Wars that I think we also need to see, maybe not in the Journey Guide, but a character I think that would be really important, is Pre Vizsla. And I'll let you talk a little bit about the importance of Pre Vizsla and why you think he'd be required.
Yeah, and this was all Matt. He came up with this character. I went right over my head. I'm like, oh, wow, him, yes. Because Maul took control of Mandalore by defeating Pre Vizsla in Trial by Combat.
Well, and taking the Darksaber.
And that is how he obtained the Darksaber, because that is the only way you can do it. As Moff Gideon said, for those of you that are maybe Mandalorian fans, you can only win the Darksaber through Trial by Combat.
They've gone back on that.
Yeah. But I think this would be a great character. And Matt, what do you think he would do for the Mandalorians?
Yeah, I think that I don't think he would go with the new version of Maul and like the GL team, but I think he would be a nice addition to the current Maul in the game with Mandalorians, Darkside Mandalorians, with maybe a Pre Vizsla, Maul, Gar, ISC, Jango, or Canderous in that last slot. Both work pretty well. The Mandalorians just could use a little love, and I always have really enjoyed that team, and it's a really fun team, but you're just so tempted to pull Maul over to Lord Vader, and I think you and I have talked on stream about some other ideas we have about lifting up Lord Vader this year, but that's for a different video. And I think that if we could get Lord Vader without Maul, I think that would be ideal, so Maul can lead his own team. I just feel like it would make the Mandalorians feel that much more themselves and bring them into their own identity, and I think Pre Vizsla would really help that out. I don't have any specific ideas on how he could really make them better, but maybe helping Maul to get the stacks of Frenzy on his first turn rather than having to spend his first turn using his first special. He could go straight into Frenzy, I think would be a pretty good way of making Maul pretty broken. I just don't know if that'd be too broken, basically.
Oh god! Just open up 5 instant kill the Kenobi. Basically, you can insta kill anyone basically because it doesn't have to be Kenobi.
The other option is you could have him help him ignore taunt, so that way when he's using Frenzy, he doesn't have to worry about taunts. That could also make it a really easy way to nuke out somebody really early. And I think, I don't know, I'm okay with Conquest character, plus if Pre Vizsla is also a Conquest character, a double Conquest character team being able to beat GLs, I'm okay with that, or even just being like an A tier, S tier non-GL team, I'm okay with that. So I like the idea of Pre Vizsla, and I would hope that he helps the Maul team and doesn't just like, I don't know, for some reason end up helping like a Bo-Katan Mandalore or something like stupid like that.
Oh my god, they have to make him Darkseid. They have to.
I think so.
Yeah, definitely. I believe the next one we're going to be talking about is the Pikes. Yes, the Pike Syndicate, and this is where I think we're going to get a new tag. So we have Hutt Cartel, we have Mercenaries. I really believe if we're going to get this Maul, this Crime Syndicate Maul, spoiler, we're going to get a Crime Syndicate tag, where we're going to get some plug-and-play viability in that sense. And there's going to be some teams where, like, you know how Jabba has Embo in some lineups, he has Boba in some other lineups. I think there's going to be some flexibility within that with Maul. In the Crime Syndicate, there's the Black Sun, the Pikes, and then the Crimson Dawn, which we'll get more into later. But I really think a new tag is a great way to push it, just like how they did with GL Ahsoka, giving us a Spectre tag, even though we already had all the Phoenix, but we're just going to move past that. Reskins are just the new theme, apparently. But no, I really do think that a new tag is crucial if we want this version of Maul. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, you could call it Crime Syndicate, Shadow Syndicate, Criminal Underworld, whatever you want to call it. Like, this is what we're talking about, is Maul kind of being this figure that was in the shadows, manipulating things from behind the scenes, and trying to stay below the Empire's radar. Specifically, I think that it's a really fascinating idea, and I think that I wish we had played more into that, especially after the end of Solo. I wish we had gone more into that, but we do see at least some of that, and I think that that's expanded more in extended lore, which is certainly cool, but I know not everyone's super familiar with all those stories and what he's done and all of that, and so I won't get into that right now, but I just think that having him work with a bunch of criminals, I think would really fit Maul, especially at this stage in life, and would create a new faction to give us enough new characters that CG can actually do this and be profitable in it, because unfortunately we can't just get all like characters that we already have relics for requirements for Maul or for whatever new GL that we're going to get. And so we have to have opportunities to have some new characters, and if it's anything like Ahsoka, we need to have quite a few new characters that would be required. And so I think you could obviously do generics when it comes to any of the crime syndicates, whether that's Pikes, whether that's Black Sun, whether that's Crimson Dawn, whether that's even more Hutts or other bounty hunters, things like that that have worked with or against Maul. You could do a lot of that, but I want to try to stick to named characters for the most part, just because I don't think a lot of us get super thrilled about, like, I don't know who was like, oh, Gungan Phalanx, yay, like, but I do think that's a possibility, because we did see that recently, right? Night Trooper, Death Trooper Peridia, they're generic characters, they're not necessarily a named character. You think about, so I think like a Pike Gunner or a Black Sun Enforcer or whatever, like I think all those are possibilities, but we're not going to get into which one it would be, because it would really just be dependent upon what CG needs for any given like faction or character, basically. I think.
Quick touch before we move on to the next one. I just thought of it. I know we didn't talk about this one. Do you think there's a possibility of a Death Watch tag being added?
I just don't know that we have enough.
Reskin, maybe? Reworks?
I don't know if we have enough of them that are named that like have enough influence. Like I think Pre Vizsla is the closest we'll get, and I'm trying to remember some of the other characters' names, and I can't even remember them. And if I can't remember them,
Bo-Katan was a part of it.
Briefly.
She was part of Death Watch.
But
I just wanted to throw that out there, because they did end up being the ones that saved Maul and Savage in the Clone Wars after Hondo, of all people, and Kenobi beat them. So
well, and I forgot to load in one image here that I know we talked about, so I will let you talk about another Mandalorian character who maybe isn't quite a fighter, and I'm gonna pull up a picture while you talk about it.
So the one that I'm very passionate about, and I think is mandatory, almost as mandatory as Talzin, is Duchess Satine. Because Duchess Satine was the leader of Mandalore, and she was everything that Maul is against, really. Like, she's all about being truthful. She wants to bring peace, justice. She wants what's best for her people. And she's not afraid to put herself out there. Maul, on the other hand, like Matt mentioned earlier, he hides and lurks in the shadows. He doesn't put himself out there unless he absolutely has to. And I would really love to see her as a conquest unit being required for Maul, Crimson Dawn Maul. I think that would be an amazing thing. You could do the scene where maybe we get Kenobi, you summon a Kenobi, General Kenobi. And you see the scene, I know. Come on, let me dream. And you do the scene where he's in that Maul-Delorean armor, and where he kills Duchess Satine. So maybe phase 1 you're facing Pre Vizsla, phase 2 you're facing Duchess Satine. I think that would be really cool to see her, and she would be a great lifter for light side Mandalorians, because by this time now it's like, alright, Bo-Katan, she beat Lord Vader, alright, she's somewhat viable, but in higher end Kyber, I've been talking to other content creators, it's like, okay, I have Bo-Katan, you don't need her, it's a nice luxury. I think she could take them to that next level. It's like, oh shoot, Duchess Satine and Bo-Katan are on there, or like there's a light side Mandalorian team, oh shoot. And I think that would be really cool.
Or as another alternative, I even think she could fit into a JMK team if they could somehow make that work. I know JMK's kit isn't really conducive to non-Galactic Republic and non-Jedi or light side online Force users, because it has to call it out every time. But
Oh
I
my
would like to see her with like some version of Kenobi. So I don't like the summon necessarily,
God.
but they do have quite the past, especially even when Kenobi was younger. So maybe having some sort of synergy directly with General Kenobi. And
Hmm.
so when you do put General Kenobi underneath JMK, he gets some additional bonuses because of the fact that Duchess Satine is there. So maybe she doesn't work with JMK, but is buffing GK, and so is therefore causing the team to be better. Something like that, I think would be really cool. Obviously, going with Bo-Katan would obviously work as well, and it's probably the easier option. But I wanted to put the option of
Yeah, and
lifting
one last thing
JMK.
that I do want to add to her, because this is my dream character. Outside of Crimson Dawn Mall, this is my dream character because of how interesting. I think she would be the second true neutral character. Because you remember how much she fought Kenobi against joining the Republic? She was the literal center of neutral planets. And she emphasized this time and time again. Because if the Separatists are dark side, she didn't want to be with them. The Galactic Republic were light side, she didn't want to be with them. She literally told Padme, I will die before I let my people join your Republic. So I truly believe she would be the second neutral character in the game. And it would be very interesting mechanics to see what she would do. And like you said, tie into GK.
I don't see her as a neutral character, but we'll leave it at that.
Okay, okay. You got the next one. I got you.
We also we threw in Lom Pike here. He's one of the few named Pikes that we have. So I think that having him be like a secondary leader for Criminal Underworld or whatever we're calling this faction in like 3v3s. So maybe he wouldn't be like the go-to to go with Maul, but maybe like that fourth or fifth slot he would do, and then in 3v3 you could split him with the other with a couple other Criminal Underworlds or something, and lead like a third a 3v3 team. I think that could be kind of make sense, kind of like how General Hera does with Spectres. You know, she has that
Yep.
leader, so you can take two of them into and use her as a second leadership if you really wanted to, or as like a tie over leadership until Maul ends up coming out. So we don't have a ton of named Pikes, and so that's why I kind of threw him in here.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I don't need to touch much on that. We already talked about the Underworld, how Black Sun, Pikes, and Crimson Dawn, which you guys are about to see, I believe, in the next one. Or, no, we got one more. We got one more. Nope, yep. Go back to that one. You're good.
This
You're
one,
good.
or okay,
No. That one, yeah. So, another one that we think will be required, and hint, Relic 10 requirement, bump it up one more, is Commander Ahsoka Tano. Because, in a sense, you're thinking of during this time period where all these duels with so much on the line and everything is going on. Maul said, literally, every choice you have made has led you to this moment. And I really think this has to be in the event because this shows Maul's final stand on Mandalore. After this, he's gone. Bye. So I think this is a really important thing. And as we talked about earlier, Maul, Ahsoka, they are polar opposites, but they're identical. They're just on opposite sides of the spectrum. One was on the dark side, raised on the dark side way. One was raised on the light side way.
I think it would make a lot of sense. I just don't, only reason I think it might not happen is just because of the fact that Ahsoka is all the versions of Ahsoka are required at R9 for Galactic Legend Ahsoka, and so I just don't know if they want to give us that. But I think it does make a lot of sense, and so I also think this scene really needs to be in the journey guide for Maul. So moving on to I think what would be the conclusion of Maul's journey, and maybe the last tier of the event or whatever, it's got to be his fight with Old Ben on Tatooine, right?
No argument.
This is the end of Maul. This is the final version of Maul, the Maul that finally comes to see the quote unquote light, not really, but like the reason why everything has happened the way it has. You know, he's starting to realize he was not the main character, basically, and
He's not him.
this is a beautiful fight, and I think that it again has potential to just be a really beautiful event in the game. It's probably not going to be a very challenging event, especially if it's like the ultimate tier or whatever. But I think that this would be a really cool event to see in the game as well.
Yeah, I have no complaints. When this fight first came out, people are like, "Oh, why is it so short? Why is it so like?" I think this is like the pinnacle fight of Maul's story. This is the conclusion, and he comes to realization as he's dying in Kenobi's arms, saying he will save us all. He is the chosen one. He realizes it. And what I love about this fight, real quick side note, is the fact that there was talks, I think with Sam Witwer, I believe it was in the interview. He says how Kenobi baits Maul. He goes into arrogant, "Oh, I'm gonna fight you," and then he goes into another stance, and then he goes into his master's stance. And after Kenobi strikes him down, that's where he's like, "Oh, this isn't a hermit. This is a grand master on the most important mission in the whole galaxy." And
Yeah.
I think and to close it up, I think this where Maul's realization comes to his eyes with how Kenobi looked at Maul. There was no anger, no hatred. It's not like, "Oh, good, he's dead. I finished that." I think you have to. You start the story with Kenobi where Maul's hatred truly came. You have to end it with that. I truly believe so.
Yeah, and I think Old Ben being a requirement makes a lot of sense
Yes.
as a part of this. So moving on to some other kind of requirements that we don't have in the game currently. I'll let you take this first on Troopers.
Yeah, so Dryden Voss, a movie that has been slept on recently is Solo. It's very, I would say it's not like other Star Wars movies, but I liked it. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was unique how they focused on the smuggler, the underworld perspective, this sort of what we're going into. And Dryden Voss was actually Maul's right-hand man. He was, as Matt said earlier, Maul's lurking in the shadows. He doesn't want to be seen unless he has to be seen. Dryden Voss was that public figure face.
Yeah.
That was for the Crimson Dawn. And I really think it would be a great character. I think, like you were mentioning earlier, maybe a possible leader, another leader for that new underworld, whatever we're going to call this new faction. I think this would be a great person to add to the game. And maybe even work directly with the new Maul. I could see that for sure.
Yeah, I think for sure I would like to see him working with Maul. And even in addition to that, I think if we can maybe even through a rework or just like maybe like a mini rework where we add a unique or something like that to Kira, I think we could have Kira be included in that team as well, because she does take the place of Dryden at the end of Solo and becomes Maul's new kind of public face of the Crimson Dawn. And so I think Kira and Maul kind of working together with, Kira and Dryden working together with Maul would be really cool to see. Kira really isn't being used with the prepared crew right now. She's not even really being that useful with Balin or anything, so I don't think anyone would be too upset to take her from those teams. And then also, she's a character not a lot of people have high relics, so I think having her as a requirement could be a really good way for CG to capitalize on a character a lot of people have overlooked.
Definitely. And next we're going into Jesse. Now, the reason why I chose Jesse and not just a basic 332nd clone or something is actually because Jesse is the one that was imprisoned by Maul. Maul captured him, and his way of manipulating Ahsoka was the good faith gesture of releasing him to back into her custody, like a war of arms, whatever, something like that. But I think this would be a great 501st lifter unit. Where you take out Echo, where you take out R Trooper, we don't know. We don't know what the kit would look like or anything. But I think this could be something that would take 501st back to the next level, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, we can use C-Rex from the Rebels Captain Rex. Just plug him into 501st." And yeah, they do some fun stuff, but it just doesn't feel right. You can still target the Captain Rex because he's not 501st. So I really think it would be quite interesting to see a definitive 501st where you're scared again. That way you're not having to rework gas, give him an Omicron. A lot of people are saying, "Hey, who's an old character that needs an Omicron gas?" Instead, I think Jesse as a lifter, possibly a healer, maybe a way for gas to recover protection faster, maybe, or for clones to recover banners in Grand Arena. I think that'd be really, really cool to see. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think gas has been out of the meta for so long, and as you can see with some of our requirements, that we're trying to like include things that would make certain factions in the game a little bit better and
Hmm.
allow CG to kind of do a multi-purpose thing where they're having a requirement, yes, for a new GL, but they're also lifting up a current faction in a way that is meaningful. And so I think that when you have that incentive to go after a new character like this, while yeah, it might not make the most lore sense out of every single character, it has some
Hmm.
lore tie-in, so it's not just completely out of left field, and it also benefits the game a lot. And so I think that that's what we're trying to balance here, and I think that would really help uh, with because I don't think many people went after GL Ahsoka because it felt like all of those requirements were self-contained and not. And for quite frankly, we didn't have a lot of characters that went with any team that was currently in the game. It was almost all new teams entirely for the marquees, and then the few characters that were already in the game were kind of trash and not really used. And so I think this is a good way for them to earn some goodwill by doing something like this and making that a requirement for the GL.
Hmm. For sure, for sure. And just to touch on that before you go into the next one, I think a lot of people, one of the most popular releases was Starkiller, and what did they do? They gave us different characters to lift up different teams within the game.
Yeah.
Granted, Talon was later used for another team, not Eternal, but Dash Rendar lifted up the Scoundrels and Prepared crew. Uh, Mara Jade lifted up the Empire and gave Palpatine a purpose, brought him back into the meta again. And then who was the other
Kyle
one?
Katarn.
I made who?
Kyle Katarn
Kyle Katarn brought some life to Mon.
made Rebel Fighters relevant. They were not a team you could use in any meaningful way before Kyle Katarn.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought him in and made the faction so much better. So I agree.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that point. And credit to Matt. I think that because this was also Matt's idea for the most part, lifting up that 501st faction that has been so deprived. But Matt, what's the next marquee?
The next one we have is some more solo characters. We have Tobias Beckett. We also have Val Beckett, who's Tobias Beckett's wife. And I think both of them are just kind of neglected characters. They kind of fit within that mercenary role. However, I don't know that they fully fit within like the criminal role. And so I don't know that they would go with Maul, but maybe kind of like we were saying with Jesse, lifting up the prepared crew, making them somewhat relevant again, especially if Kira is going to get stolen to go with Maul, giving them a new leader that actually is good. And using maybe some of the leftovers that Dash doesn't take or something like that, I think could be really cool. We are stealing a lot of content from Solo, but I think it's a good place to get characters from because we're missing a lot of these. So I don't know if you have much more to say on Tobias or Val Beckett.
No, I don't have much to say. No, I think you covered it.
The last thing we have is a ship requirement for Maul because almost every GL has one ship requirement. And while I think Scimitar could be an option, I don't think it's the most I don't think it's in CG's best interest to require Scimitar because just like with Ahsoka, it would be like requiring Ahsoka's Jedi Starfighter, which everyone already had. And so instead, we came up with a new ship, and I'll let Troopers talk about it.
Yeah, so this is the Knight Brother ship. This is Maul's Mandalorian Starfighter, basically. And I think this could be very interesting depending on what direction the game is going, per se. If we're going to get a scoundrel or mercenary fleet, you could slot him in there, especially with that criminal underworld tag. I think that would be very interesting as well.
Yeah.
Or this could maybe be a plug-and-play ship like Houndstooth or something, because he's not really tied down to any specific faction. He's not with the Sith, he's not with the Empire, he's not with the Rebels. That when he has this, he's sort of doing his own thing. So I think this would be a really, really cool plug-and-play ship. I do have one more thing that I did not tell you about because I wanted your honest initial reaction on the video.
Oh boy.
Yeah, usually that's not a good thing. But I have a massive theory, and I need you all to lock in and hear me out. I believe the funnest, that's not even a word, the coolest thing that I have had, and I have not told anyone on my stream, a Siege of Mandalore raid. And I think it would be amazing to see that. because you could tie in all the pikes and everything, because all these criminal underworlds are working. He has a conference with them in season 7. He tells them to go into hiding, retreat, fall back, all of that. And I know GL Ahsoka has not been confirmed needed for a raid, but if I am going to pick a raid that is going to be needed for to tie to this GL, I really think a Siege of Mandalore could be really well. You bring Jesse in, you have all those marquees and stuff, and I really think that would be cool to see.
I don't hate that idea. The only thing I think that kind of doesn't fit is that really the Siege of Mandalore was between Maul and Cat, and not this new Maul that we're talking about. And so I think that maybe like I forget the name of that planet that they're on in Rebels where Ahsoka fights against Darth Vader. Malachor 5. Because they're actually on a moon, not a planet.
Yes.
Like a Malachor 5 event could be kind of cool,
like
because then you can require Inquisitors, you can require Phoenix, and you can require like Maul, Ahsoka. I think you have some more options there, especially if you kind of try to include the world between worlds as like a phase or something like that.
Sure, the Cape may interfere. That's why they couldn't have Vader in the Endor raid.
But I'm just trying to think, because if we do the Siege of Mandalore, we're going to require maybe Galactic Republic, which was just required in the raid. We're going to require Mandalorians, which are required in Crate Dragon. So we're just overlapping a little bit too much, I think. And so I think maybe like a Malachor 5 fits that just a little bit better, but I'd have to think about that more, because
Here's my quick counter argument. And they wouldn't require Galactic Republic. They would require clones. So it'd be clone specific. And then it would be it could be Jill Ahsoka, because you're not, like, let's be honest, you're fighting in all these, you're fighting against yourself, basically. The Empire on Endor, you're fighting against the Empire. In Battle of Naboo, you can literally have a B1 take down the B1s in the raid, like. So I wouldn't be concerned about that. Which way it would go, I'm not sure if you would fight as the Mandalorians, if you would fight as the like who you would be fighting per se, but I think it would be quite interesting. But yeah, I think, is there any last comments or concerns on anything that we talked about in the video?
My biggest thing is that I really don't think it's going to be Thrawn. And so if it's not going to be Thrawn, we have to have a dark side to even it out. I mean, maybe you could argue that we get a neutral GL next, but I just don't see the evidence for that. I think there's some characters that we didn't even talk about. There's some criminal characters in episode 7 that come up that you could potentially include as requirements. I know that doesn't fit lore-wise, but like, when does CG care about that? I think there's characters that are going to come out if we do like an episode 3 anniversary. I think there's plenty of characters there that you could require from Maul. Same thing with episode 7 with the anniversary. If we get some of those, I think you could require those. Like, I think it just builds upon, I think, where we're going in the year better to go towards Maul, or at least something prequel related. I mean, Bad Batch, Revenge of the Sith, both happening this year, I think that's pretty sure with an era. I don't see a lot of good options outside of Maul, and the only other like counter I'll say, but I think some people will probably put in the comments, is maybe like a Chancellor Palpatine GL. And my only counter to that is that we already have Palpatine as a GL, and I don't think we're getting 2 Palpatines as GLs. And also, I really want Chancellor Palpatine to be a lifter for Lord Vader, because Lord Vader sucks butt. So
I love how every video ties into how much Lord Vader sucks. So we're talking about a completely different topic. Like, oh no, yeah, Lord Vader sucks, by the way. Just had to get it in.
So Maul GL is actually going to be a second GL that goes on the Lord Vader team.
First ever, yeah.
Yep, it's just so that way Lord Vader
got demoted to Conquest character. He's going to be put into Proving Grounds.
Yep.
But no, to conclude this video, I do also agree with Matt. One counter argument that I thought of while recording this video is people are like, "Oh, Bouch Leia was also required for Endor Leia and stuff like." Okay, but what else? If you're gonna do that with Enoch, all right, what else are you gonna require for Thrawn? Like, it just doesn't make sense. TIE Defender, like that's, everyone has that 7 stars now. Like, I just don't know what they would do. So I'm very passionate. Maul is my favorite character in Star Wars all time. So I was a little biased. That's why I brought Matt onto this video to speak logic into me, per se. But no, I appreciate you coming on, Matt. Everyone, please check out Matt's channel. I will leave a link in his description. He has helped me so much with my channel, and he has helped my channel grow with my community. He's helped me be a better content creator. I would not be anything of a content creator without him. So massive shout out to him. All the credit in the world to him.
Also, subscribe to Trippers.
Oh, yeah. All right. Oh, yeah. Subscribe to me. All right. You guys all have a good day. I will see you tonight. Peace.